This is Joe Coughlin with the Record, North Shore, and I am here with Cecily Kaz. I did say that correctly.
You did, yes.
All right, nailed it. Candidate for Kenilworth Village President, current trustee. And how is everything going today?
Everything's going well. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Sure. And we could just start out with a brief introductory statement if you want to just say who you are and maybe why you're running for village president.
Sure. So I'm Cecily Kaz. I am in my 8th year of living here in Kenilworth. I am part of a family of 5. I'm with my husband and 3 kids. I have young kids. They're all 3 at Sears, and I have really enjoyed my work as a trustee. It's been a great fit for me and my professional background in architecture, engineering, and consulting. And I would like to be president because I care deeply about the village. I see what we've done in the last 4 years and what's coming up, and I'd really like to be a part of it.
Okay, great. And jumping right into the question, something that's on the top of everybody's mind, across the globe, really. But how would you describe the village's response to COVID-19, and what can the board do to help the community emerge from the pandemic?
Sure. So, here in Kenilworth, I think we've been fortunate up here in general on the North Shore, and we've been able to manage our response to COVID. We've worked with the state and the county health departments, obviously. And what I've seen our village has really been doing through the police department and communication from the village staff is really helping the residents understand what phases we're in terms of the COVID risk and the mitigation, and also what opportunities there are to help stay safe. And also now information about vaccinations. We have been publishing that information as it comes available. So one initiative that the police department did start up pretty early on is that they were able to redirect some funds from an annual Coffee with a Cop initiative that we do here in Kenilworth. And we, instead of inviting people to come and meet with the police officers because that wasn't appropriate in COVID, we were able to instead use those funds to purchase masks and communicated to the residents that masks were available free of charge and would even be dropped off at their homes. And so that was something that I supported as chair of the Public Safety Committee, worked with the police department to get that information out to the residents.
Okay. And kind of as we move forward, are there any initiatives planned or what can the board do to help not just people, but businesses come out of a really tough year?
It's a great question. I think we are all cautiously optimistic that we are entering into, the current phase that we're in. Things are hopefully going to get better as the vaccination rates increase and the weather gets warmer. And so helping support the businesses as needed. It will be interesting to see. One thing that we did this past summer was our restaurant in town. The board was able to approve a temporary road closure so that they could operate their restaurant outside in the warmer months. And that, I think, really helped them keep the business going and was a great opportunity for residents to be able to dine outside in the community. So I think the board should always be looking for those opportunities to support the local businesses and keep them going. Something that's in the village's control is how we operate our beach. And that's something that, again, currently as a trustee and on the Public Safety Committee, we are looking at. It's a topic for an upcoming meeting, looking at what the communities around us are doing. And we hope that we'll be able to continue to offer similar services as what we do in a typical year. It's kind of like last year with more social distancing. We don't have reservations for the beach, but making sure we have a bit of a capacity limit based on the usable area. Okay.
Switching gears to a bit of kind of capital improvements. I know the village is in the middle of the stormwater phases, and also just going forward, what's kind of your priority in terms of infrastructure improvements? If you're elected, what are your priorities for that, finishing it up, and kind of what's queued up next?
Sure. So the village has a great 5-year capital projects plan in place and that is updated every year in the fall as part of our budgeting process. And so I believe in that plan. I think it's been very well executed, and it is a very thoughtful approach to how we can address the reality of our community, which is no different than other communities up here with our aging infrastructure. And so how do we spend responsibly, I think, is the goal of the current board, and that is something that I would carry forward. So what we're seeing is, in addition to the stormwater plan, trying to get phase 2 on the calendar. That's an immediate goal for us, but also we have our water tank recoating project is already scheduled for August. We have multiple efforts with our sewer lining, water mains, all of that will be coming up, road resurfacing. These projects are all anticipated to occur in the next 4 years. So again, that's all part of an existing plan. Beyond that, there will always be need to continue to shore up the existing infrastructure that we have. A big exciting project that I see and that I hope to be involved in is the looking at a master plan for our lakefront. And if you look at the Kenilworth Beach, it's no surprise that there is a decommissioned water treatment facility there, sitting in the middle of the beach. And it's something that I have been involved with as a trustee, is really looking at what amenities residents want. We really consider that a gem of our community, but there are some infrastructure needs there, looking at the groins, looking at the shoreline, being able to tackle the erosion issues, retaining sand, and then of course, improving some of those amenities and making the building a little bit more user-friendly for the kids that are, running around in their flip-flops.
Yeah, and that's an important project for, I'm sure, all residents. Understanding that it's early in that process, what kind of is a timeline that residents can kind of look to for some change?
It's a great question. I don't know if you've had a chance to look inside that building. There's parts of it that look like, I like to characterize it as a submarine. It's not a typical reuse project, and we're taking a beautiful piece of lakefront that has a building that is not just an inappropriate use for us, but also has pipes and storage tanks and all sorts of things around the facility that the residents don't even see, but that unfortunately are going to have to be planned for if we do any sort of erosion protection work. And so what the process will be, we've started as a board looking at strategic planning for what might we even want there. And I think I can say after 3 of those facilitated meetings, the board all believes that this has to be a resident-focused amenity. But so what does that mean? Well, we need to get some experts in, both in looking at what's existing and also at what's possible there. I think the science behind the best way to retain sand has changed over the years. And so the type of metal structures that we have, the groins that we have, I don't think that would necessarily be recommended by a consultant that came and looked at it. Now you can see up and down the lakeshore, you see more of these cove beaches with the revetments, the big boulders. And so Kenilworth needs to go through that process. It will take time getting those experts in to see what do we want, facilitating really large community conversations to understand what do we want, looking at who our partners are. The Kenilworth Sailing Club has operated there for many, many years. They have access to the water, and we'd like to continue to offer them access. The Kenilworth Park District uses the beach in the summers for their summer camps. The preschools use the beach in the summer for their summer camps. So really it's multiple stakeholders re-envisioning what we want, bringing in the technical experts to help us achieve that. And then of course, figuring out how to pay for it, which is an important part of that process.
Of course. Along Green Bay Road, there's at least kind of one marquee vacancy right there on Park Drive on the corner. So I guess what's the board's plan to fill that in general and just to enable economic development as a whole?
Sure. So I can tell you that that has very recently been leased.
Oh, great.
And yes, it's been leased by the owner of the property, and it is, I can't remember the name, but it is a mental health therapist consulting operation that has a current storefront in Northbrook, I believe.
Okay.
So they're just moving into another part of the North Shore community. And so we're excited about that. It's nice to see that space filled. Really, we'd like all of our spaces to be filled, and we'd like businesses that the residents want. I think this is a very walkable, community-oriented place, and you see people walking with their friends, you see kids on bikes, you see people with their dogs. I think we want to see businesses that continue to serve residents as they're going through their day, but also give them something like you see Great Coast, the restaurant, has provided. I think it's been really a wonderful addition to the community to be able to go meet a friend, just a couple blocks away. So that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for businesses that really enhance our community experience, both for our immediate residents, but also for, the broader community. And it's some diversity of the businesses there. And also we'd like to get occupants of those buildings who are going to help us maintain an older building stock. I think that's the challenge that you see all up and down Green Bay. We're not unique in this, is that you have an older building stock. And so you need to find businesses that sort of have the patience and the funds to address the issues that those buildings have.
Yeah. Similar line of questioning in terms of the TIF district, the TIF funding you guys created a couple of years ago, I believe in the summer of 2019, been a unusual couple years since then, I guess a year and a half. So I'm just wondering, how did it perform in 2020, and is it fulfilling the expectations of the board?
At this point, I think it's very early days for the TIF. The TIF was able to, I can't tell you the exact number, but I think right now we have somewhere around 100,000 in the fund. And it's so far, everything is moving along as we anticipated because we didn't have any plans right out of the gates. What we are doing, and unfortunately COVID delayed some of this, is that we know that the residents are concerned about what Green Bay might look like and what our corridor might turn into. And so one thing that we're doing is we actually have a lot of existing protections in place. We have our design guidelines, we have height restrictions, we have a process that any new business owner would have to go through to make improvements to those buildings to make sure that they're in line with the character of Kenilworth. And we're actually looking at all of those documents right now. It was a little bit delayed, but our current president, Ann Potter, had set that up, the Green Bay Road Corridor Review Committee. And so if I'm president, that would be very important to me to continue that work, to make sure that before we even think about utilizing TIF funds to make changes in the district and really looking at improvements to the building stock, infrastructure improvements is a big concern there. We really want to make sure that all of these documents, these framing policy documents, have been updated and reflect what the residents want. So that's really the next step. As I said, it was delayed. It needs to happen. It's right now they've assembled a committee of residents and building owners that are going to be looking at, businesses that are going to be looking at those documents. And then we also have, as part of our 2021 budget goal, is to initiate the streetscape plan project. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Many communities have done them around here. So what I would see coming up for that is that's a very, very community involved process where we're really looking at what do we want to see here down the road as improvements are made. What should those improvements look like? And that can be, lighting, it can be what the paving should be, it can be facade improvements, what we might want those to look like. So that streetscape plan process is something that is facilitated by a consultant, but very, very much involves the community. And so a recommendation that I made this winter was, well, let's budget for it for this year, but I don't think we should start this process until we can get the community out into the business district, which with COVID has been very challenging. So again, I think that we're, this all might, the next president is going to have some of these projects that have been delayed and just ready to start. So it will, I think, start moving very quickly.
I'm curious, since you brought that up in the streetscape, as a resident for many years, as well as being on the board, you see a lot of other communities looking at streetscape and the improvements, as you mentioned. Some focus on safety, some focus on walkability. What are some of the priorities for Kenilworth and its residents?
I think when we look at the business district, we see a lot of opportunity to have a more consistent look, improve our lighting, look at our trees. Trees are a very, very important part of the character of Kenilworth, and that should extend to our business district. And it has historically been an important part of the district, and our garden clubs and beautification committee have really helped keep those trees healthy. But that is a perfect example of what the streetscape plan can do, is to include something about trees and plantings, and make that a priority, and either make funding available or have it be some sort of partnership with the businesses to ensure that that happens in the future. So, it is sort of those softer items really come up in the streetscape plan. I think crosswalks are important for our community. I know that there are some limitations to what you can do on Green Bay Road, because that's an IDOT road, and because our portion of Green Bay has, the railroad tracks going up one side with no sidewalk there. It's not an easy thing to put a crosswalk across Green Bay without a light, but I think addressing those types of issues, parking, how people are parking, how we're getting them safely across the street, I think that that's all going to be part of that process. And I know the residents, they have a lot to say about that. We have a lot of residents that are crossing Green Bay to go to the train, crossing Green Bay to go to the school. My kids bike across Green Bay. So I think it will be a big discussion for the community with, I think, a lot of interest.
Okay, moving on to in the past year, specifically, there was a campaign to change the name of a local school, Joseph Sears School, because of a complicated past from the namesake Joseph Sears in regard to potentially race and inclusion. That obviously encompasses more of the town because he's one of the town's founders. So I'm curious to know your thoughts on that campaign and the changing of the name, as well as is Kenilworth an inclusive community, and can it be more so?
Sure. So I'm not exactly aware of where the school is in their process. I do believe that this is going to be something that the community takes up together. And the last I heard, it was something that, again, waiting for COVID to be over so that any meetings that happened, any public forums could happen in person. And I think that's important because it's not just residents of Kenilworth that are going to want to have input, but possibly others might want to engage in that conversation. So I think it's an important conversation for any community to have, and I would certainly prioritize it and look forward to the conversation if I am elected. How it's going to go, I would guess that it's going to happen over multiple steps, and it will be facilitated, and we will, learn about the best way to approach this with some expert assistance. I would hope that we would do that. But it's, again, I don't know exactly where things stand with that, but I welcome the opportunity to participate.
And, you kind of touched on it, but do you believe Kenilworth is an inclusive community? Can it get better in that aspect?
I think Kenilworth is an extremely inclusive community, and I think that we are very just what I hear and what I experienced myself is that this is the type of community that whoever moves onto the street, someone brings them a pie. It's you come in here and people just do anything they can to explain to you what all the opportunities are to get involved. We have over 20 membership organizations here in Kenilworth. We have multiple opportunities for people to get involved on the boards and commissions and at the school and whatever they want. I think that this is a community where you get to know your neighbors and you want to know your neighbors and you want to do things, whatever you can to support the community. I have never in my experience here seen that red carpet hasn't been rolled out for specific individuals. And I think that we are seeing a lot of international families coming here. I think that that's typical for the area these days with a lot of the businesses that surround the North Shore. And again, I think that it's great opportunity for our children to meet new people. And I know that the school has done an excellent job with their diversity, equity, and belonging committee and really communicating to the Sears school community about the types of the types of diversity that exist and calling attention to different ways that diversity is celebrated both in the community and worldwide. And so what I see from where we were 4 years ago is that this is it's a part of the conversation, and it should continue at all levels and across all of our organizations here in Kenilworth.
Great, thank you. Again, switching gears, I've talked with Village Manager Brennan about different events you've planned for the community. It's kind of been a recent, in the past few years, I don't know about priority, but a recent priority for the villages to get more active and more community engagement. So moving forward, what can we expect out of that effort for residents, and what do they have to look forward to in terms of community events and engagement?
Sure. So I think if you look back, you'd see that Kenilworth is all about its traditions, and the traditions involve public gatherings. And so whether it's the Memorial Day parade, the Christmas tree lighting, I can name so many of them. I think the community likes to get together and celebrate. And we have, whether it's the Boy Scout involvement or, the Kenilworth Park District is, of course, heavily involved in a lot of these. It's something that Kenilworth residents enjoy and expect to see. And so the village works in partnership with these other organizations to allow these events to happen and to create new events. And something that I was involved in this fall, I worked with the Park District, and we created a small committee, and we celebrated our parks, and we created a very COVID-friendly self-guided tour to go through the different open spaces in Kenilworth and learn a little bit about the history of them and some of the information about the plantings. And we had a scavenger hunt for the kids, and we involved the garden clubs. We have 4 garden clubs in the community. And so for me, that was a perfect example of a partnership with existing organizations, the village and the park board working together to really draw attention to our history, our parks, but also create something for people to do. And so I think that was very successful. We tied it into the Park District's October events with their Oktoberfest, and they had the great series of food trucks this summer and fall, which were very well attended. And so the village gets the current president has said it, I'll paraphrase her, it's not glamorous work, but it's essential work, right? That's really our priority, and that's what I would prioritize as president. But of course, the fun stuff is important too. And whatever the village can do, I think, to participate with these other organizations to offer these events is great. And the Park District has the setup for the registrations and so much of the logistics of those events. And so I really see as president that I would want to strengthen those relationships so that we can really work together to have offerings that reach all of the community, no matter of people's age, and in a way that makes sense for the village, something that we can handle.
Okay. Those are the questions. We were able to do it in 30 minutes. So thank you for that. And just to sum up, if you want to give kind of a final statement on why you should be the next village president and why voters should choose you.
Sure. So I am excited for the opportunity, and I really was humbled by the support that I received by through the KCAC process. I'm sure you're aware of our Kenilworth Citizens Advisory Committee, and moving through that process and talking to the delegates who are representative of the member organizations, I really got to know the issues, the questions that people have, and it was important for me to hear a different perspective on some of the work that I've done in the last 4 years as a trustee. And so I take that with me. I take some of those suggestions with me. I would into my presidency. I also have gotten to know the other candidates, those who are running for my position, the 3 open trustee seats. And I think that the KCAC has presented a wonderful slate. I think we, in the little bit of time that we've gotten to work together through that process, I think that Walter Kelly, Amy Hannes, and Chris Otson would be wonderful complements to the board, and I would really enjoy working with them. So that's what I'll say. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity.